Well, thank you, Paul, for that introduction, and thank you for coming to listen to me, because I am today speaking as a carer and sharing a personal perspective on what assistive technology has done for my family. I've been a carer for 50 years, and thinking of the blockbuster scenario, I would say that we as a family have made the transition from hands-on to digital, not as a quantum leap, but rather as a new form of co-production, with digital technology enhancing the care of my son, Simon, about whom I'll primarily talk, my husband, who has heart failure and end-stage liver cancer and is about to move to assistive technology, digital healthcare, and also with my sister-in-law with dementia. And we are just making her house into a smart house. And in all cases, the touch, the personal experience, and the caring is there. So, first and foremost, just a reminder about assistive technology from the carer's point of view. As many carers say to me, are there new opportunities for carers, or are we seeing the march of robots? Well, of course we're not. But I think for a start, it's worth just revisiting the number of carers, and many of them have no idea whatsoever about the potential of assistive technology. It's reckoned that there are about 6.4 million carers, 640,000 dementia carers. I'm sure those numbers are inaccurate. We know that care is becoming increasingly complex. People are being supported at home, which is great, with multiple health conditions, high dependency in some cases, and we are seeing a growing number of sandwich carers who actually have multiple caring roles. I think I've gone beyond being a sandwich carer, even a club sandwich carer, and I think I'm something of a mixed salad, because I would add in also that I have a disabled grandson, and I think that digital technology is making my life and the family's life much easier, because at long last, we and the professionals are in communication. Very sadly at the moment, about 54% of carers give up work to care, with huge financial consequences, and often consequences for their own well-being. I have always worked while being a carer. I say to myself and friends that it's respite, but it's more than that. I believe that if you want change to happen, if you want good lives for people with disabilities and chronic health conditions in the community, then there have to be some activists. But I hope I've been a positive activist, working in partnership with the public sector, the professionals, the third sector. And then, of course, we have an aging population. And as somebody who's aging myself, I do get tired of being described as a bed blocker, a burden, causing intergenerational unfairness, because I bought my house a long time ago. And I do think that we have probably up till now missed a trick with our aging population, because my experience is that they are most likely to be digitally excluded, but in many ways they have the most potential to have their lives transformed. And we're busy transforming my husband's last weeks or months at the moment. So I wanted to talk about people, and this is Barbara's story. I'm starting off with Barbara, who cared for her husband Malcolm until he died. He had dementia and multiple long-term conditions. And this is an example, I think, of why we must promote assistive technology, because of the weight and knowledge and abilities and complexity of carers' tasks. And as Barbara has said, family carers increasingly manage a web of care at home. Family carers face increasingly challenging roles. The number of people with 3 or more long-term conditions is predicted to rise from 1.9 million up to probably 2.9 million by 2018. And there are very significant consequences there for how we manage those complex health needs at home. And we shouldn't forget the emotional needs, the frequent isolation and anxiety felt by carers. The Royal College of General Practitioners earlier this year, in a survey, found to their surprise and alarm that all carers in the survey showed some anxiety, depression, or tiredness in their roles. But the biggest problem was communication. A recognition of their roles as experts by experience, their lived experience, which Paul's already referred to, and co-producers of care and support. And here's Barbara's web of care. Now, of course, not all those people need to come together at any one time, but there are a range of different people involved in Malcolm's care, and this could be a template for my husband's care at the minute. There's the people concerned, the support workers, the people who provide a whole range of different roles and come in and out of a household. There are 8 different people involved in my son's care. And how do they know what I know about Simon's health needs, about the plans for his week, about any safety issues in the house? Digital technology, and Simon, as I will say in a moment, lives in a smart house, enable everybody to share that information. We're not substituting robots for people, but we're enabling people to provide a network of care and support with dignity, which reflects the needs of Simon and reflects the needs of my husband, and which actually works. And here's Simon's story. Simon, I think, was fortunate. He was born the day President Kennedy died, which gives you an idea of mine and his age, and we were straight away offered Harperbury Hospital in the picture. We were a diplomatic family, go away and have another child, but of course we refused. Simon, aged 50, is in the photograph beside the hospital, and he's achieved so much more than anybody would have expected. But in the last 8 or 9 years, that has really been due to the role that assistive technology has played in giving him dignity and independence. So, thinking of digital technology and Simon, managing the transition from care home. Simon started off in a very good small care home as an adult, and there he is in the photograph developing independent skills. If you wonder why he's wearing a helmet, he has hydrocephalus and he just had some surgery. And no, he's not playing with Play-Doh in an age-inappropriate activity. He's making molds for some porcelain china, or he thinks it's porcelain that he's about to cast. And technology allows us to plan person-centered care at home, to manage and to tailor activities and support to individual needs. And it offers creative solutions regarding safeguarding, maintaining independence, sharing knowledge and information. Because if you ask most people what they want, young or old, they actually do want a home of their own, a life of their own, the ability to be independent and adult. And I often sort of think that the question to ask, and this goes back to the outcomes that Paul discussed, whose life is it anyway? Simon's choices and his pathway to independence, thanks to assistive technology. First of all, what did Simon really want? He wanted his own home with a front door, which he could open. He didn't want people coming into his room at night. We talk a lot about loneliness, and loneliness is a terrible thing, but actually a lot of disabled people lack privacy. They lack the option to have a bit of solitude at night or in the day if they want it. And how many of us would want innumerable people marching through their house? Originally, in Simon's case, it might only be for 10 minutes. Is he all right? The 10-minute, 15-minute call-out. And assistive technology removed that anxiety of sort of a positive Noah's Ark of people invading his privacy. Secondly, of course, Simon wanted a life. And what did he want to do? He went to a residential special college and he became very interested in horticulture. You'll see more of pictures of him in a moment. And he wanted to develop his own garden. And he loves art, and there was a good community programme at Pallant House Art Gallery in Chichester. But Simon couldn't just go on his own. Because of his brain damage, his behaviour can be very, very erratic. His volunteers, wonderful volunteers from the community, they needed some training and support, but they needed to be able to get in touch with us or the support workers if there was a problem. And we wanted Simon to be safe. Now, I'll say a bit about safety now, because I have heard comments that particularly for people with learning disabilities, it is not safe to actually be in your own house. Something might happen. You might not interpret the danger that's lurking around the corner. But we had one instance with Simon when, sadly, there is hate crime in the community. Some local lads thought it would be fun to set fire to the back of his house, to the fence and to the conservatory. They'd stolen vodka from Tesco's, they'd swigged it down, and they were drunk happy. I don't think they realised what they were doing, but the fire caught. Now, Simon's safety net at that time included CCTV, and we had a big debate about the ethics of intrusion. Simon wanted CCTV. He wanted to know if anybody was in the garden or in the house, but we had quite a few comments that we were robbing him of his dignity by having cameras which could actually record what was happening. Well, of course, all the alarm systems went off. The police, the care workers, the support workers, and ourselves were round at the house in moments. The CCTV identified the young people who'd been in the garden. They were from a local school. And we had the choice of going to the local young offenders court or actually using restorative justice. And I chose that because I thought there were some important messages to share with the school, with the community, about how people can be safe even when bad things go wrong. I might say the young people did, very shamefacedly, plant some new plants in Simon's garden. The police replaced the fence for us, and our only problem was actually getting the council to release a new wheelie bin. And if ever you've seen a great crumpled, burnt lump of plastic in your garden, you'll know that you don't want it there a moment longer than you want it. And Simon continued to live in his house. He continued not to have people tramping through his door at night, and he's doing very well. And here's Simon, his smart house. Simon has sensors on the curtains and the bed to make sure that he gets up in the morning, because he doesn't have live-in carers. That saved the local authority a lot of money. He has verbal reminders which were being recorded with his main support workers or our voices about bolting the back door, about not going out without his keys, about remembering to check the bathroom because he has a habit of letting the bath overflow. Those reminders in a familiar voice actually personalise the whole service. And as you can see, here is Simon in his garden with some magnificent vegetables, which we're never allowed to eat, I might say. They're kept as sort of as prize entries in the local allotment. And Simon, very, very happy in a home of his own, and here with one of his volunteers who'd been supported. But I wanted quickly, too, to look at one or two other families and older people, and Brian and Margaret's story. And Brian and Margaret, I'm using their story with their permission. The photograph is taken from the back because my grandson with autism thinks it's rude to take people's pictures from the front. But there you are. Margaret has Parkinson's and a range of other conditions. Her husband is recovering from a stroke. They're interdependent, but things were getting very, very, very difficult at home. And I put up some figures, which I won't read out because of time, but about the tragedy of many carers who never get a break. And I say tragedy because actually, as Margaret said of her husband, if you don't get a break and you don't go out, you're so boring. And I think that's actually a relevant point about having a break. If carers have a break, they bring something else back into the house. But Margaret was frightened of being on her own. She was frightened about remembering her medication. Brian didn't think he could go to the bowls club or volunteer at the local church. And both were very frustrated. Digital healthcare and monitoring of Margaret on her own has really worked. Margaret has reclaimed her kitchen, as she says, without her husband trailing round after her with a tea towel. Brian has gone out and has actually got a life. And getting a break is, in all surveys of carers, a top priority. And getting a break doesn't necessarily mean a week at the seaside without the person you care for, but it does mean being able to have something like an ordinary life, which is why I'm here today, all systems switched on at home and no problems. And a reminder that family carers remain carers even when their older relative moves to a residential setting. I've included some quotations here, and they really remind us that personalisation and personal care matter even when somebody makes the big transition. And not only is it about digital connectedness, because being able to Skype your relatives in New Zealand, for example, is a wonderful way of keeping in touch. And I think we underestimate the potential of older people to become digitally literate. But also, new technology, assistive technology, is good for the carers. Many of the care staff in care homes I've talked to have felt they were excluded from the treatment and care program, the medical advice, the support, which would have been available if the person they were caring for was in the community. Many complained that their contact with primary healthcare services was not particularly good because the GP was too busy to come out. Now in those care homes which are digitally connected, then life is very, very different. And I just think of my mother, had multi-infarct dementia and was the world's greatest escaper. She loved water, we're New Zealanders, and she loved swimming. But when the police had rescued her 3 times from the care home to which we had moved her because of the escaping, she claimed that she was about to have a lovely swim in the beach at Gisborne on one occasion, whilst about to try and walk across a weir. We decided something had to be done. We didn't want to lock her in. She loved walking, and we piloted a tracker bracelet. There were a lot of discussion, ethics of intrusion, should you actually put trackers on people if they can't really consent? But actually, it changed her life. And thinking of innovation, I should have said at the beginning that Simon was one of the first people with learning disabilities to use assistive technology to live in his own home, alone, in a smart house, because we were part of an EU-funded study across 5 countries to see if actually people like Simon could benefit from assistive technology and could have the greater independence that they yearned for. The answer, of course, was yes, but I have to say very few people like Simon still have all the advantages that he actually enjoys. And just a final sort of switching back to care homes, there was a carer who said to me that her mother is now fully digitally included. Her carers are linked up to her primary care and indeed to a hospital for the various digital healthcare monitoring that she needs. And she said, when I went into care, I thought I was giving my life away. But now I know that I haven't changed my life. I've simply changed my address and I have a better garden, which I think is a very good way of looking at it. And to end with, I think we need to really boost new technology for the next generation, the younger generation of carers coming up. I think the figures on this slide are totally inaccurate. I'm quite sure that there are several 100,000 young and young adult carers around the country. And they have told us, and research has shown us, that the impact on care on their lives can be tremendous. They lose days at university and school, they feel they can't move away, they can't take a job, and they are frequently summoned home because of the anxiety or something to do with the parent not feeling happy without the young carer coming back to deal with the problem. The young carers in the picture are at a summit at London Zoo, which NHS England convened a couple of years ago. And one of the most important issues raised there was that the young carers, young adult carers, wanted better communication, and they wanted to use their digital skills to actually improve the lives of the whole family. And of course, these are digitally literate young people, but very few of them, in fact, I think only one at the summit, said that his father had assistive technology at home, but he acknowledged it would have transformed his life. So keeping people safe at home and the big challenge and the big opportunity for assistive technology, because there is a constant debate. Is it a substitute for people? Is it enabling, upskilling people? Or is it frankly a way of just cutting costs? The key issues which have come through my personal experience and those of other family carers I know who use assistive technology is that above all anything else, it maintains privacy and dignity with security and a sense of genuine co-production for the person needing care and support and his or her family. Secondly, we were talking about outcomes earlier, and assistive technology can help develop and maintain independence. It reduces the numbers of visits, the various carers going through the house. It reduces the need for sleepover staff, which is a wonderful way of saving costs on hard-pressed local government budgets. And there's no doubt at all that it reduces the need for those endless monitoring calls. I've met so many elderly people in particular who have said that half the time they don't know who goes through their house with 15 minutes visits. And if only there was a way of feeling safe without that constant tap on the doorbell and turn of the key by you don't know who. And then medication and self-care. Many people now, particularly older people, have complex health needs. My husband now takes 50 different tablets and medication a day. And without prompts, which assistive technology, digital healthcare can provide, he wouldn't take them properly. So there's a real, if there's a real sharing program, sharing of information, then families can actually lead ordinary lives. But what are the challenges? I still think there's the ethics of intrusion. I talked about CCTV. We know that quite a few families are putting spy cameras into the family home. I hope I never have to do it. I wouldn't like to do it. But there is a sort of issue here. Is it supervision or invasion of privacy? And I think we have to help carers to know that they themselves can actually become intrusive if they become hooked up on some of the spy technology that's around. Secondly, the argument that we're talking about robots, not people. But we actually are connecting, not replacing people. And the conversations that take place between my son's carers, for example, there are 8 different people, I include the volunteers here, who need to communicate each week about whether Simon's having a particularly difficult spell, about any special needs, about the situation with his father, etc., etc. And there's a community of interest around him, one might say a new extended family, which really works. And then there are still the big questions, I think the challenge. Do the commissioners know enough about assistive technology? We need a whole area, information and an expert system. And here I can't resist waving Carers UK's new booklet, Modern Solutions for Carers, What Can Tech Do for You? And I'm delighted that a number of local authorities, including Simon's in West Sussex, have now purchased the carers resource online, because empowering carers helps the right decision. And to end, the final carers perspective, getting the message out and how to pay for greater connectivity. The Care Act assessment and support for carers. In theory, that's a golden opportunity to ask carers, what do you, as well as your relative, need to have a life? 54% of carers shouldn't be giving up work. I've been able to use assistive technology to monitor Simon, and I'll be able to use it to monitor my husband, to enable me to continue to work and to get out. And if that seems selfish to continue working, and I have been told by 1 or 2 people they think I should be at home devoting my needs to the family, my response is that by going out I bring something back to the family. And actually my family don't want me hovering around them all the time. They enjoy the sort of shared experience of carers and new technology that keeps them absolutely safe. And let's get creative and dynamic with personal budgets and personal health budgets. It's a golden opportunity for carers to really think through what would make a difference, and very often what is much more affordable than traditional care. And we have to work proactively with the community and other groups to improve digital connectivity. In Sussex, where I live part of the time, there's a lot of interest in digital buddies, matching up schools with older people, for example, so that they can all get online and they're not terrified of the prospect of assistive technology. And then looking forward and the challenge, my final slide, assistive technology can transform carers' lives. It has transformed our lives, but we still need to create awareness and promote its potential. David Bean spoke yesterday, but in the State of Health and Social Care in England, which CQC published last week, he writes, in designing new services, new technology can play a major role in making sure people are cared for safely and in maintaining independence. However, new technologies need to be well thought through. It's important that we consider how we implement them, and we need an open conversation with the public and about both the benefits and the risks of change and innovation in this sector. And just a very final quote from another carer, we never realized what a transformation assistive technology could make. And our parents feel safe, connected, and we've got our lives back. And if I look back on my 50 years, I didn't expect when Simon was born and we had the diagnosis that he would be living in his own house now, that he is well known in his local community. He has a network of volunteers and support workers alongside ourselves. And above all else, he's actually got a life for himself. And that is assistive technology. So I'm grateful, and I hope that all of you will actually promote the potential so that more carers, and we do have our personal budgets, we are actually micro-commissioners if you think about it, can actually achieve the same thing for a much wider range of people in their communities. We carers are a scarce resource, but assistive technology is a way of making the most of that resource. And in my case, certainly, it has transformed our lives. Thank you.